So we're getting close to the winter festival known as Christmas. And, I haven't celebrated Christmas now for, man, it's been a long time. I think 1996 was the last time that I celebrated Christmas. So it's been a long time. My wife said she's never celebrated Christmas. And then her and I, we've been married now for just about 22 years. And so our children have never celebrated Christmas. We've never had a Christmas tree in our home. We do celebrate the birth of Christ in the sense that we're thankful for it, and we sing songs about his birth and things of that nature. But as far as the modern day Christmas festival, we have never done that as a family and don't intend to start doing that. I remember when I was about 15 years old and I was talking with my then future wife on the telephone, big old huge cordless phone, it took up one half of your face. And or it might have even been a corded phone. I know we had a corded phone there in my grandparents' house. But I remember her telling me to turn to Jeremiah chapter 10. Now I have here, I'm going to read out of an old King James Bible in Jeremiah chapter 10 because that's what I had at the time. And she told me to read this text to her on the telephone, and my jaw dropped open. I couldn't believe that this was in the Bible because when I read it, it was just so obvious to me that what we had been doing and what a lot of people do, especially Christian people do this time of the year, is condemned in Jeremiah chapter 10. Now, I've had a lot of people over the last, almost 25 years try to tell me that Jeremiah 10 is not talking about a Christmas tree. And I'll get more specifically into that here in a second. They've told me, well, this is just idol worship. We can't say this is a Christmas tree, so forth and so on. And I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with people that have attempted to get away from what this text says, especially when you understand. Let me talk about this before we read this chapter or part of this chapter, especially when you understand the time period of the winter season in the Second Temple period Judaism, like when Yeshua lived. So we know that the Jewish people were under the authority, at least to some degree, of the Romans. And all one has to do is study about the Roman festival called Saturnalia. And when you study Roman Saturnalia, what you'll do when you're reading about Saturnalia is it sounds like Christmas. The only difference is they weren't celebrating the birth of the Messiah, but the Romans were celebrating the fact that the days were about to get longer and the nights were about to get shorter as you traversed from the winter solstice, which takes place on what we call December 21st, all the way up to the spring equinox, about March 21st. So when the days and nights become equal in length again. So I do believe, my belief is that the modern day Christmas festival is a mixture. It's a blending of certain things in Scripture with the Roman Saturnalia festival. And I believe that what took place was that Christians with good intentions in the probably 3rd to 5th century AD, Christians with good intentions, not with bad intentions, but with good intentions, attempted to take a festival that was in honor to false gods and reinterpret or baptize certain practices or customs, symbols, and make it into a festival of honor to the Christ child. So I don't think that the Christians that did this, I don't think they were trying to do anything wrong. I don't think that they were trying to worship false gods. I don't think that they were deceived to the point that they were, just trying to straddle the fence. I think they genuinely wanted to take over what had been dedicated to false gods and do that, or keep those symbols and honor Christ, and make it to where the pagans or the heathens that were coming to Christianity felt like, okay, this is the real meaning of these symbols. Now we understand, like evergreen tree, everlasting life, candles, light of the world, things of that nature. I really believe that that's what took place from my study of history. But when we go to Jeremiah chapter 10, in Jeremiah chapter 10, beginning at verse 1, it says, "Hear ye the word which Yahweh speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith Yahweh, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them." Verse 2, I can't help but think about the reason that pagans, like the Romans and other civilizations in antiquity, would bring evergreens into their home during this time of the year, right around the winter solstice. And it's because the nights are the longest that they'll ever be in the year, and the days are the shortest. And so these evergreen trees, bushes, what have you, all of these things reminded them of life and the continuance of how the days were going to get longer after the winter solstice festival. And I think what was taking place was a lot of them were trying to appease the sun god, because a lot of people would look at the orb of the sun as the great big deity, and they were trying to appease the sun god to come back, and they believed that that was a way to appease him to come back. And so let's decorate the home with things that don't die. That is a heathen in ancient times being dismayed at signs in the heavens. Yahweh is telling the Israelites not to be dismayed at the signs in the heavens. Yahweh causes the sun, moon, and stars to do what they do, and we are to look to them for signs, seasons, days, and years, Genesis 1:14 through 18, but we're not to be alarmed or dismayed or frightened or worried by what is going on up in the heavens. Okay, so I think that this fits hand in glove, fits perfectly with the winter solstice festivities. And then in verse 3, it says, "For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not." The first time that I ever read this, I was like, whoa, what are we doing? Why do Christians do this when Yahweh says it's a custom of heathen people and it's vain, it's worthless, it's useless? Why do we do this? Now people say, oh, it's just talking about an idol, and the workman with the axe, he's chiseling the tree down and all of that. And I don't disagree that there were idols that were sculpted, but I don't think that that's what this particular text is saying. I think you're trying to read too much into the text. I think what it's saying is that the axeman goes out into the forest and cuts the tree down. I think the axe mentioning here in verse 3 is talking about, boom, I cut the tree down with the axe, and I bring it into the house, and I have to fasten it with a nail and a hammer, which you wouldn't have to do with an idol, because an idol is sculpted to be able to stand on its own. You don't have to fasten it down with nails and hammers that it moveth not, but a tree you have to. So I think this is talking about going out into the forest, cutting a tree down, bringing it into the house, decorating it with silver and gold, because you're dismayed at a sign in the heavens, nights getting longer, days getting shorter. And you fasten it down so that it doesn't move. And you look to it as a sign of fertility and how that you're going to appease the sun god because it's an evergreen bush, and even though the nights get longer, the evergreen trees always stay green. I mean, at least up until you cut them down and then they start dying because they have no life source. But I'm not saying that back when Jeremiah was written that he was talking about a modern day Christmas tree in 2019. What I'm saying is that the custom or the practice of bringing a tree into your home at this time of the year, what we call the Christmas tree, I think that it stems from what was taking place back here at the time of the prophet Jeremiah. It's the child of what took place way back when. I think there's a connection there. There's a correlation there. And then in verse 5 it says, they are upright as the palm tree, but they don't speak. They must needs be born because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. And so this idol, this idol that they would worship, this tree idol, because of its evergreen qualities, it can't do good, it can't do evil. We don't need to be afraid of them. But bringing the tree into your house, fastening it down so it doesn't move, decorating it with silver and gold, ornaments, putting lights on it, singing songs to it. Oh Christmas tree, thy leaves are so unchanging. Singing songs to it, putting presents under it. But we're not worshiping it, Brother Matthew. You know, it reminds me of when Roman Catholicism says, well, yes, I know we sing to Mary, we pray to Mary, Hail Mary, Mother of God, we venerate Mary, but we don't worship Mary. We don't latreo Mary, which is the high Greek word for worship. I don't buy that. Just you saying you don't worship something doesn't mean that you don't. But I'm just not convinced. I'm not convinced that the modern day Christmas tree does not originate from this particular practice in Jeremiah 10. And so I don't do this. I don't go cut down a tree or buy a fake tree from Walmart and bring it into my home and fasten it down so it don't move and decorate it with silver and gold and lights and ornaments and put presents up under it and sing a song to it, Oh Christmas Tree. I don't do that. I'm not going to start doing that. And I think that if you're a Christian, if you're a believer in the Messiah, a follower of Christ, I think that you need to think long and hard about that practice and ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's the purpose in this? You know, traditions tend to outlive the reason for the tradition. It's like the old story I heard about the woman that she always cut off both ends of the roast before she would put it in her pan to cook it. And her husband asked her, he said, why do you do that? And she said, well, my mother always did it. And then when they asked her mother why she cut off both ends of the roast, and she said, well, my mother always did it. And so finally the husband got to ask the grandmother one day, and when he asked this old grandmother, why do you cut off both ends of the roast before you put it in the pan? And she says, well, my pan was always too small. So there was a reason why both ends of the roast was cut off, and they may have not known that reason as a young couple, but the tradition outlived the reason. And so, I'm just not comfortable at all with taking the birth of the Messiah and trying to reinterpret old pagan traditions or old symbols, And the reason I'm not, even though these Christians, I believe, were well-intended, the reason I'm not comfortable with doing that is because texts like Deuteronomy 12, 28 through 32, Leviticus 18, 1 through 5, Jeremiah 10, 1 through 5, texts like this, which teach us that we are not to worship Yahweh in the way that the heathens worship their deities. We're not to take what the heathens were doing and try to reinterpret that or say, okay, now we're doing it for this reason. And the reason that we're not to do that is we're to worship Yahweh the way that He tells us to worship Him. And He tells us in the first 5 books of Moses, the Torah, He tells us how He wants to be worshipped. So that's the way we're to worship Almighty Yahweh, not how we choose or what we want. I'm not trying to be rude or mean or ugly. And some people that watch this video, this might be your first time ever being introduced to it. I remember I had a first time back in 1990, early 1996, or sometime in 1996, before Christmas, is when I learned about this stuff. And then I kept my last Christmas that year in 1996, and I haven't done it since then. We always make the feasts of Yahweh to be the biggest celebrations that we do in our family. So might be something for you to think about and ponder on, do some research on. I know there's a good documentary about to come out that is it's a joint effort by the people that produced the Way documentary and then 119 Ministries. It's called The Christmas Question. I'll put a link under this video to the trailer for that documentary, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be great. I haven't watched it yet, obviously, because it's not out, but December 19th is just a few days away from when I'm making this video, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be a good one. So anyhow, I've talked for too long at this point. I hope you have a great day, and study and learn and grow and serve Yahweh. Shalom.